Alfini, members of MIR, thank you very much for allowing me to be a part of this great event. I want to congratulate those members of the year 2002 class of inductees, and you really don't know what an honor this is for me today. It's impossible to read any story about auto racing or the history of auto racing without coming across, whether it's in Clymer or Scalzo or Dick Wallen, any of the authors, or Speed Age magazine, for those of you who remember that, without coming across the name of Johnny Thomson, who was treated very reverently in those articles. I've tried to separate Johnny's career into three main phases. And some of these names are going to be perhaps a bit non-New England to you, but bear with them. Golden Boy. He picked that name up during the period of 1936 and 1952. That's when he was winning midget championships in New England. Mad Dog. Mad Dog is a name that you would never want to associate with Johnny Thomson. You never thought of him being a Mad Dog. And I'll explain why he did get that name. And finally, the Flying Scot, which was the moniker that was handed to him during the period 1952 to 1955 to 1960. How many of us can say that when we were 14 years old, somebody came along and built a racetrack right across the street from our house? I wish I could say that. I can't. But Johnny Thomson could. Because in 1936, a track was built across the street from his house. And he watched that being built, and he watched it and watched it, and he figured out a way to get in there. And when that track opened the first day, he had it handled. He snuck in like a good race fan. I've done it. I had my own instant pass kit at Lonsdale Sports Arena. We've all gone through some of that. So Johnny watched what he saw that first day in amazement, and he was the last to leave. The midgets were absolutely fantastic. The following year, at age 15, he built his first race car. It looked a little like a swayback horse. He had this huge radiator up front, he had the high tail, and things came down in the middle a little bit. But it looked great. The radiator was a little too large for the car. He started driving the following year at age 16 and raced with Bay State for 3 years until World War II broke out. At that time, he went off into the U.S. Army Air Force and served as a crew chief on a B-25 bomber in the Mediterranean theater. He earned 5 battle stars and also the Distinguished Air Force Medal for bravery. Following World War II, he, like many others, came back to where they had left for the service. And Johnny picked right up with racing. He won his first feature that year in 1947. In 1948, he was the UCOA New England champion, and he followed that up in 1949 with a repeat. That's when he picked up the name Golden Boy. There was a book written about the UCOA, United Car Owners Association members. And I remember the author, Margaret, I think was her first name, and she nicknamed him, and that's a name that I have heard at Lonsdale and Seekonk and other places attributed to Johnny. The next period is 1953 to 1954. At this time, Johnny moved up into sprint cars, first with the Caruso Offie, then with the very powerful Sam Trailer Offie in Pennsylvania. And Sam Trailer, who was a gargantuan-sized man, who was very, very pleasant. His size just gave a wrong impression. Sam Trailer gave him the nickname Mad Dog, because here you have this New Englander coming down into Pennsylvania, into the home territory of Tommy Hinnershitz. Now, Tommy at that time had been the Eastern Sprint Car champion for 4 consecutive years. And here comes this young New Englander who beat him and won that championship. He won that championship in 1954. What a record. 8 wins, 5 second place. He continued to run sprinters on and off, and it was during the same period in 1953 that Johnny ran in his first Indianapolis 500. That was a hot year. Very, very hot. Very humid, very hot. And the reason why I went to Indianapolis that year, I was still in high school, was because of Johnny Thomson. We were so proud to have a New Englander in the 500-mile Indianapolis race that we all followed it. I was able to follow it a lot closer than some. I was able to get there. And I'll never forget the thrill of seeing Johnny Thomson race in his first Indianapolis 500. His car suffered a broken oil tank, which put him out of the race, but then he jumped into Spider Webb's car and drove another 45 laps in relief. Because of the heat, there were 2 and 3 relief drivers per car. It just was a tough, tough day. The third phase of his life, 1955 to 1960, he qualified for 8 consecutive Indianapolis 500s. His top finishes were a 3rd, a 4th, and a 5th. The high point was in 1959, when he took a newly designed race car, painted pink. They never had a pink race car in Indianapolis up until this. He took this pink race car and went out and set a new track record and sat on the pole. He finished 3rd that race, only because he had to make one extra pit stop because of a problem with his tires. He dropped down to 3rd. At that time, the name the Flying Scot was applied to Johnny, and it took hold. He had been married, he and Evelyn Peterson were married in 1951. And they lived in, apparently first in the Lowell area, then they moved to Springfield, Mass. And in 1956, Johnny and Evie and their 2 sons, Dale and Dana, left Springfield for Boyertown, Pennsylvania. A typical race for Johnny Thomson, the 1957 Langhorne 100. You had 2 laps to qualify. On the 2nd lap, he spun, did a 360, kept going, and that lap was the 4th fastest of the day. His first lap was the 1st fastest of the day. So he did start from the pole. He jumped into the lead at the start of the race. He started lapping cars in 3 laps. By lap 41, he had lapped the entire field. On lap 59, he had a tire go down. It was a rapid deflation. Today, that's what it's called, because no one wants to hear that a particular brand tire suffered a blowout. So you have these rapid tire deflations all of a sudden. So Johnny came around to the pits, pulled into the pits, hit the brakes, spun because of the bad tire. They got him turned around, changed the tire, got him off, and in 6 laps, he had retaken the lead. He went on to win that race in 59 minutes and 53.74 seconds. I only mention that because of all the years of racing, that was the very first dirt track 100-mile race ever run in less than an hour. And he did it with a pit stop. The rest of them did not. One consistency that ran through Johnny's entire career was his phenomenal ability to race anything with wheels. His groove was the high one. He liked to plant that right rear on a cushion or up next to the rail. And that's where you'd see Johnny Thomson running, up high, whether it was Lonsdale Sports Arena or Langhorne. Many drivers feared Langhorne. We've heard references to Langhorne earlier today. And particularly the area called, and you don't have to listen to this, you can close your ears, Puke Hollow. I mean, it's not the thing that you want to say after you just got through eating. But they feared Langhorne. Johnny did not fear Langhorne. Johnny feared no track. But Johnny did fear one thing, and that was snakes. One evening, he and his wife, Evie, were coming home to their house in Boyertown. They pull into the driveway, and there ahead of them was a snake in the middle of the driveway. Evie is the one that had to get out of the car to shoo the snake away so John could get out of the car. Here's the man who conquered Langhorne and other venues and had a little problem with snakes. Being shy was a trademark of his. He let his driving do the talking. But he was fiercely proud of one thing, and that is his Scottish heritage. A loving husband and the father of four fine sons. David and Darrell had been born since the move to Boyertown. And when they moved to Boyertown, their first two sons, Dale and Dana, went with them. So two were born in Massachusetts, two were born in Pennsylvania. Four sons, all whose first names begin with D.A. At that time, Johnny was running the D.A. lubricant special. Four boys end up with D.A. starting their first names. So a loving husband, the father of these four sons. Johnny and Evie would be so proud of them all today. His work ethic was an excellent one. When I contacted Jack Martin, the former curator of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Museum and a former executive with DA Lubricant, he told me that Johnny's answer to a reporter about his physical regimen drew this response from John. I follow a strict regimen of actively working my Pennsylvania farm by pitching endless pitchforks of hay from the truck bed to the overhead hayloft door. This and physically moving and stacking bales of hay, combined with 12 or 14 hours of related daily chores, is my fitness training program. He loved that farm. He really did. Johnny Thomson was indeed a New England treasure. He was ours. He captivated us following World War II. We only loaned him to Boyertown, Pennsylvania, where he turned sprint car racing on its ear. And then he showed the country from coast to coast what he could do in a championship car. He left us too soon. Johnny Thomson left his mark of greatness on the American racing scene, which time can never erase. It gives me a great deal of pleasure and personal satisfaction that I have the honor to present the name of Johnny Thomson into the New England Auto Racing Hall of Fame. And I'm very proud to say, I'd like to ask that Johnny's sons, Dana and Darrell, and Johnny's sister, Grace Scott, come forward and accept this most deserved recognition of New England's favorite son. The Flying Scot is back home again.
As Lou mentioned about getting choked up, I've been to a couple of these myself, Sprint Car Hall of Fame and a Midget Hall of Fame out in Indianapolis, and to accept. And it's an extreme honor for our family to be recognized like this in honor of our father. So thank you very much to the Hall of Fame and all the fans and kind words. Thanks.